That's correct.
Oh, hell.
This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guest tonight, one of my favorites, Stas Krapivnik from Moscow. Stas, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Okay, uh, two
That
topics
was
tonight.
water.
Number one, the significance of the city, fortified city of Avdeevka falling to Russia after 2 long years. What is your opinion, your take on the fall of Avdiivka?
Well, Avdeevka, you got to understand, is a suburb. Effectively, it's a suburb of Donetsk. So, what you've got there, uh, one second. What you have there effectively is, like I said, it's a suburb of Donetsk. So it's something that can be used. It was used as a staging ground for shelling Donetsk. A, B, it cut off the water supply to Donetsk too. So it's got several. It's got several strategic issues with it, depending on how you're looking at it. From a political point of view, well, we'll start with a humanitarian point of view. By taking Avdeevka and pushing the front back, all the shorter range artillery can no longer be used to shell Donetsk. Your 120 millimeter mortars, your shorter range artillery, the 120 millimeters artillery howitzers can no longer be used to shell Avdeevka. There's still plenty of stuff that can reach it because you've got the M77s, you've got the Paladins, you've got other systems that Ukrainians have. But the problem is to get them into range, they have to bring them up closer to the front, and then they become targets and get destroyed. However, you still got plenty of American HIMARS with Americans shooting them. So you've got that issue. And they're still hitting them with HIMARS. Very expensive toy to drop on civilians, but they spare no expenses. So you've got that. Plus, it opens up the water supply to the city. So that helps a lot too. From a political point of view, it also shows the population of Donetsk that there is improvement, that this war will end and it will end positively. From a military standpoint, Avdeevka, first as a symbol, Avdeevka was even more invested than Bakhmut or Artyomovsk. Well, let me invested in that they've been pouring concrete and making elevators and bunkers and everything else and tunnels for the better part of the last 8 years, 9 years. So now that's taken, that's a big hole in their front. And they've lost quite a bit of equipment because when they started running, they left a lot of equipment behind. And you couldn't get that equipment out anyways. So the two main roads that were fed in, the northern road was fully cut off by Russian forces, physically cut off. And the southern road was under direct line control or fire control. And going through the fields was a no-go because the fields, the muddy season has started already, and nothing can get through those fields. They'll just get bogged down in it. So they left a lot of equipment. They started running in smaller groups. And then the day after the mass exodus began, Siersky came out and said, "Oh yeah, I gave the order to leave." Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure, General 200. That is General Body Bag. He gave the order to leave the day after everybody was running. Now, there were still a lot of troops that were left in Avdeevka. And the days afterwards, up to yesterday, there was clearing operations. So there's well over 1,000 troops still within the city. A lot of them were wounded. Most surrendered. Some held out to the last and were liquidated. So that was their choice whether they're going to surrender and live or die. So, and now the front is sagging in that area and is being pushed back. More than likely within the next week and a half, we're going to see that front move back, move westward another at least 10, 15 kilometers.
Well, let me ask you the big question for me. You talked about politically, the people in Donetsk are going to feel somewhat relieved because a lot of that close-up shelling is going to stop. Not as many people will be dying. There won't be as much destruction. And I want to point out this has all been on civilians and civilian infrastructure. There's no military installations at all there. But what about the political fallout for Zelensky? He just fired General Zaluzhny. He appoints this new guy, and Zelensky has once said, we will never surrender, we'll never give up Avdeevka. So what's the fallout likely for Zelensky? Are people going to turn on him? Is the military going to start turning on him? Has morale decreased? I mean, I would think this has had a huge impact.
It has. Well, first of all, Zaluzhny was planning on giving up Avdeevka just as well. It couldn't be held at that point. It was a three-quarters encirclement and growing very quickly. The main supply line, tactically, it was already encircled because once the main supply line was cut and the other supply line was under direct fire, you're not going to get much in. There is still plenty of equipment and food in the city. I mean, the city was well rationed. They're going to be recovering American-made equipment and NATO equipment for quite a while. I could probably arm another brigade just with American stuff at this point. There's so much out there. The difference is, too, though, is the troops' morale was broken. That's why you always leave a back door, a very inconvenient back door, but a back door for the enemy to escape out of. Because the moment you cut off the back door, he's got no choice but to fight to the end or surrender, depending on the enemy. But as long as there's a back door and he knows it could be cut anytime, the desire to run is going to be there. Then there's the problem with what really sealed it all off was when one of the Azov battalions ran. They were in a chemical plant, and they were underground. The Koch's chemical plant, which is northwest of Avdeevka, and they had an order to attack southeast, and the troops inside Avdeevka had to attack northwest to cut the Russian wedge off and open that road back up. And they refused. They had one company that went out, it got wiped, and they refused. In fact, not only did they refused to stay and fight, period, and then they ran. The problem with Azov, of course, Azov is a punishment brigade. They're really good at killing civilians. They're really good at robbing. They're really good at being a blocking force and shooting their own guys in the back. They really suck at direct line combat. That's not their thing. That's one of the reasons why the great Azov-style heroes lasted about a month, especially as soon as Russia said, we're not going to go in and clear it out. We're just going to bomb it into oblivion. We're going to use bunker busters, and we're just going to level it to a point where they're not going to climb out of there. And they all surrendered real quick after that. So they're basically a well-funded criminal organization. They're the guys that Eric Prince will probably be happy to hire when he decides to since he's decided to recolonize Africa.
All right,
You've heard of that, right?
Yeah. What about Zelensky's political future because of this?
I don't know. You know, there's a lot of the regular logic isn't working here. Now, first of all, to Colonel McGregor and to a lot of these other guys that are waiting for the military to instigate some kind of coup, ain't going to happen. I'll tell you why. Because no matter how much, and McGregor understands these guys are I don't know if he understands fully. Because he constantly says, Putin doesn't want to kill a lot of people because these are fellow brother Slavs. These aren't brother Slavs, these are Russians. The Russians are both sides. And while we're at it, there are no Russian coups, military coups, historically. There aren't. There haven't been. For 1,000 years. The only thing that even the Decembrists weren't a military coup. There are a lot of military leaders in there, but it was still led by politicians. And that's something that should be taken. There are no military coups in Russian history. There have been revolts, there have been things like that, but there's always usually a political figure that's running that, and some military may side with him. But hey, a general's going to turn around, lead his army back, and overthrow the government. We don't have that kind of history. Even the whites, when they revolted, Kerensky came in not as an admiral at that point, but as a dictator that was elected to that position. In the South, on the white side, there were politicians leading that effort, first of all. Well, sure, the generals led the fight. But again, there's always civilian politicians. So that's just part of our history. So no, I don't expect some general to just pick up his division and go and overthrow the government. It'd be an amazing thing. That Zelensky, I don't know. I think at this point, today is the 23rd. Tomorrow starts Dragon 24. And for those that don't know what Dragon 2024 is, that's one of those exercises under Stalwart Defender, which is the NATO's giant exercise that's running from 22 of January to, I think, the 13th of May or somewhere around there. It's really just an umbrella under which there's going to be a bunch of NATO exercises, one of which is Dragon 24. Now, Dragon 24 is an exercise on the Polish-Ukrainian border that has 90,000 plus troops involved, NATO troops, plus about 1,200 armored vehicles, from tanks to BMPs, BTRs, and so on, IFVs and wheeled infantry fighting vehicles. So there's a big force there. There's a Turkish paper that reported that NATO is basically taking the old Barbarossa plan and is getting ready to move in. So, and I'm thinking they might be stupid enough to actually do that. Move a force in first of all, in from Poland into Ukraine up to the Dnieper River, thinking that then they can Russia will stop at the Dnieper River out of fear of NATO, and then move in a force from the south, from Romania. Plus, there's pressure up in the Balkans and the rest of Poland. A relatively large force up there. So I don't know. If that happens, it'll be a direct war with NATO. I mean, not all bets are off. All the gloves are going to be off too. And what happens is Gaza is going to be starting to happen in Warsaw and other places, because there's nobody's going to tiptoe around that. So that it's going to get ugly real quick if they're stupid enough to do that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the escalation in this conflict just doesn't stop.
No.
The United States is behind. Well, the globalists that control the United States are behind all of this. But, a direct conflict between Russia and NATO, Russia is already in direct conflict with the United States in this soccer match that's going on in Ukraine, proxy war. I don't know. It's pretty dangerous, and I don't think enough people realize how dangerous the threat is to Russia's existence. Now, I want to ask you one more thing about this conflict. I read in a United States media outlet that Ukraine had shot down 7 Russian bomber jets, Su-25s, whatever they are, with American Patriot missiles, all staffed by Americans, because the Ukrainians are not skilled enough to use those. Is there any truth to that, Stas? Have you heard anything about that?
First of all, yes, and it's not just Americans. Just so you understand, about 1/3 of all NATO anti-aircraft systems are presently in Ukraine. 1/3. So once they're destroyed, there's a lot less left to defend the rest of NATO when the big war starts. And they seem to be very hell-bent on starting. Now, having said that, about 5 of those 7 systems, Patriot systems, have been destroyed. Now, reports go around that the British lost about 40 officers and men manning some of those systems. So there's been at least 400 Americans killed. A lot of those are American military that are just under contract with some Merc company, but really are still American military. And the British are losing people too. So just to understand, each one of those Patriot systems with all the launchers cost the taxpayers $1.5 billion dollars. So if 5 of those systems have been destroyed, that's $7.5 billion. So while Americans rot in the streets in poverty and get flooded with migrants and get kicked in the teeth by their government, we're burning up your equipment. Stop the stupidity. Stop what you're doing. But, and to all of NATO, you hear from people constantly, oh, but we don't support the government. It's not us, it's the government. When the bombs are falling on German cities, only 10% of the Germans held Nazi party cards. But the bombs didn't ask who you belong to, which party, or what your allegiance were. They just really didn't give a damn when they were blowing things up. That's the reality. So people need to either A, just accept that they're going to be part of this war and there'll be casualties in this war probably, or B, do something about it. Sitting on your ass and saying, it's not my fault. I'm just a person and the government does whatever it wants. Well, yeah, but you're going to get to eat the consequences too, just like everyone else. So, got to make a choice. Got to make a choice.
I've been frustrated that there hasn't been really a critical mass of people in the United States opposing what the government has been doing for the last 10 years in Ukraine, and now since October 7th in Israel. All kinds of people are out in the streets, millions and millions around the world. I think probably millions in the United States on their street corners with signs, we stand with Palestine, blah, 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 blah. But those street signs and street protests don't change anything. The globalists who are in charge of this only understand one thing, and that's force, power.
Yeah, that's why the farmers all over Germany, Germany, all over Europe, the farmers are now blocking the roads. Let me put it this way. Europe is on the brink of total collapse, and I'll explain why.
No, I agree with you. Go ahead.
Everybody constantly says, Europe bought gas from Russia, cheap energy gas. Well, okay, yes, that's part of it. Let's see what else Europe bought from Russia. Gas, gasoline, diesel, raw oil, plastic, steel, manufactured steel goods, like semi-assemblies and so on, paper, fish, meat, fertilizer, and so much more, even cloth and things like that. Basically, Russia wasn't just a supplier of raw commodities. It was a supplier of semi-finished goods for a lot of the businesses too. And all of that's gone. Now, to make things even worse, because Russia is one of the biggest producers of diesel in the world, but since it started selling a lot of oil to India, and India started to manufacture diesel. Diesel is part of the cracking process. You get pretty much the same amount of diesel out of the standard cracking process per barrel of oil. I believe it was 18 gallons out of a 50-gallon barrel of oil. You get 18 gallons of diesel, if I remember my math correctly. Anyways, that diesel was going to Europe by the Red Sea. Well, no, it no longer is. So Europe no longer has Russian diesel. It no longer has Russian diesel via India. It no longer has a lot of things. And it no longer has Russian fertilizer. And Russia is one of the biggest producers of fertilizer. I'm talking, depending on which type of fertilizer, up to 50% of the world's production. Europe doesn't have the fertilizer. It doesn't have the diesel for the tractors. Spring's pretty much here. It's planting season. Depending on what part of Europe, it's planting season within the next 2 weeks. And there's nothing left. Nothing's coming. And what's coming is very expensive. U.S. sure as hell not going to send its diesel. It doesn't have barely enough diesel of its own. Because diesel is a very standardized process. You just can't make diesel. You make other things with diesel, and you only get a certain specific amount of diesel. So Europe is screwed. Food security in Europe is out the window. This, quite literally, by the end of this year, you could have famine in the poor European countries. Surprise! Welcome back to 150 years ago. So again, the Germans can go march up and down the streets. The Greens don't give a damn. Wait till the next elections or something like that. They're going to get rigged just as well. So either you take action or you suffer the consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's all about. You suffer the consequences of being silent. You suffer the consequences of not taking action. Couldn't agree with you more. And it's very frustrating for me to watch this happening in the United States. And except for the farmers and their tractors, not much really is happening elsewhere. I have one last question about the special military operation. You know, I have been paying attention to this, obviously, reading Russian media, nothing from the United States, nothing from Europe. And one of the things that used to frustrate me is, why is Russia being so patient? I've come to the conclusion that Russia is not, and China is the same. Neither are going to be provoked to overreacting because they know where that is going to go. What are your thoughts on the Russian strategy and the progress of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine?
Well, there's multi-levels to this war. We're talking multi-level, four-dimensional chess here. On the one hand, since the Ukrainians, because their masters ordered it and they go off like minions, decide to attack a three-layered entrenchment line, defensive line, with inadequate forces. If they want to die, kill themselves off, let them kill themselves off. That's why during the summer, during the Great Ukrainian Offensive, you had kill ratios of 10-1, 10 Ukrainians for every Russian soldier. Right now, it's a lot lower because Russia's on the offensive. It's in Avdeevka, it was closer to 2-1, 3-1. So there were, yes, we suffered more casualties. We're in offensive, clearing a very heavily entrenched, fortified city. Further west, they're not that heavily entrenched and not very fortified. But things will start moving faster and faster. Plus, Ukraine lost a lot of its very effective and very experienced soldiers. On the other hand, this is a long game. Europe was going out for a quick knockout. Within 2 weeks, then it became 2 months. The sanctions will take Russia out, blah, blah, blah. Well, the sanctions have all backfired. Unfortunately, they don't backfire that fast. So they still have to accumulate and they still have to cripple. Europe is collapsing. And the longer this goes, the deader Europe becomes. It becomes one of those appendages of the Eurasian continent that's poverty-stricken and pretty much it becomes worthless. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. Or they go to war with us. Either way, we are winning time to recoup our industry and mass weapons manufacturing. So either Europe collapses economically and wakes the hell up, or they collapse economically and decide to go to war. Well, they'll get a wake up of another form. So this is a long game, and you can start to see some of the cracks. But for all that, I spoke to a journalist who came back from France and covering the farmer revolt and all that. And he said he had one guy at the end of his report. He had one guy who came out there, Putin, come save us, the French guy. He's like, but besides him, that's pretty much so it. All these other farmers, they support Ukraine because their brains, they can't think. They really rationally can't think. They've either been dumbed down or I don't know, maybe this is genetic defect. Maybe it's something in the diet, but they can't connect their support for their government support for Ukraine to their crap position. There's no money to subsidize them. They get flooded by cheap Ukrainian grain that's really being priced at below manufacturing or growth cost because the Ukrainian oligarchs are just dumping because they're not planning on sticking around. So they're dumping at rock bottom prices. They're not going to pay their workers. But these farmers, and it's not just there, it's in Germany, it's most of these guys, they really can't connect one and one. They get three, they get zero, they get anything but two. Their support for Ukraine, and I've seen this in England too, where they go, oh, it's horrible, I can't afford the heating, this is all horrible, this is all horrible. Oh, Slava Ukraina, like dumbass. You can't afford the heating because you can't afford the LNG and the American LNG. The Russian gas is gone, and that's all because and your taxes are up, your expenditures are going to pay for Ukrainian migrants in the Ukrainian war, and there's nothing for you. Think about it, but they don't. They're incapable of thinking. They can't connect the dots, the rational dots right in front of their nose. They're all emotion-driven, mindless. I don't know, entities. They're not. It's a biomass now instead of an individual human beings. They're thinking for themselves. It's sad, but I mean that's where I see most Europeans and a lot of Americans, probably most Americans too. Unfortunately, they actually stop to rationally thought of things through all the way through. They understand they're being screwed and why they're being screwed and connect the dots.
Yeah. I got a phone call coming. I don't know where the phone is. All right. One last question for tonight. We talked about Navalny before, but you know, it only took a couple of days for the United States, whatever you want to call them, security state, the CIA, the State Department, Defense, military industrial complex, that whole crew crafted their narrative that was read across all media, point for point. There was no variation, nothing. It was all Vladimir Putin killed him. Now, you and I have talked about Navalny. He's not a pretty guy.
No.
I just read where his mother castigated his wife, who's now been running around with other men who never visited him in this prison. I guess they're separated. The son doesn't want to talk to the mother. And now this is Navalny's mother. She said, how dare you, at the Munich security conference, his wife spoke, how dare you speak in the name of my son when you abandoned him? Stas, the narrative, it is so powerful. It is so united that we're talking about, can't people connect the dots? Are they so brainwashed? It's more than brainwashed. It's neuro-linguistic programming that's been going on for 100 years, maybe. What are your thoughts?
Regis, this is Hollywood. I mean, this is a script literally written by Hollywood. The beautiful, blonde, struggling widow whose husband has been brutally murdered while she's in exile takes on the fight against the evil dictator over in Russia that we all know we must hate. I mean, this is Hollywood. This is Hollywood to the X degree. Short history of Navalny. Let's begin with that. Short history of Navalny. Navalny was a mid-level bureaucrat in the Kirov Oblast. He and his brother were able to move a protected forest into lumbering category and sold it off to a local oligarch. His brother's been sitting in prison for a while for that little deal. And of course, they pocketed all the money. Navalny had his curators in the government who wanted him around. I guess they were trying to pressure Vladimir Vladimirovich. Navalny finally, what his mother said too was that his wife pressured him to return to Russia, where he was arrested because he's been bail skipping. I mean, the things he did would have landed any regular citizen in jail for 20 years, long before he ever went. And his mother said that his wife got him to move all his property into her name, into his wife's name. So Navalny goes to jail, and his wife takes up the fight in London, where she takes up the fight with a couple of her boyfriends, because there's been more and more coming out, including her former personal assistant, who said, "I can't take this anymore. She's all fake. She's not really for the fight. She's all about she's got lovers left and right." And for the 2 years he was in jail, she never visited him, didn't speak with him. But Navalny's death has got to be the most timely gift the CIA and MI6 could ever wish for. I mean, let's look at February 2024. Carlson Tucker's interview with Vladimir Putin blows up the internet, over 250 million views. And that's not counting Russian views, because we watched that in Russian, plus every other Russian speaker. Avdeevka, gone. Congress doesn't, or the House of Representatives doesn't give the money, and there's a really intensifying fight on the border between Texas plus 26 states and the federal government, which I'm amazed it's actually still going. I thought it would be done by now. But no, Biden's team, the collective Biden, are stupid enough to keep pressuring the issue. There's the farmers' revolts. There's Gaza going sour for the Israelis, who are turning more and more in direct genocide and advertising it. That's the amazing thing. I mean, they don't hold back. They'll tell you exactly what they're planning on doing. They're all crazed enough. There's the Houthis cutting off the Red Sea. There's all this cascading crap. Plus, it's not just Avdeevka. There's Russian movement all up and down the front, because it's all being pushed. Avdeevka was just a big push through, but it's breaking everywhere. And then Navalny dies. And you take everything there and just clear it all out. There's only one narrative now. Putin murdered Navalny. I mean, a more timely death is hard to come by. Plus, what would it matter for Putin? Why would Putin kill Navalny? First of all, because he's his major competitor. Navalny never got more than 2% of the vote. Even when he was pushing the Nazi line and the ultra-nationalists as hard as he could get more than 2% of the vote. Because everybody also understood that if Navalny or someone like him ever comes to power, it's civil war in Russia, all across the board. Nobody wants this little bastard, especially once everyone started, even a lot of his followers started to understand that this guy is basically just a CIA muppet. I mean, the guy got pushed out of the Liberal Party, Yabloko, for being an absolute racist. We told the Georgian in Russian is Gruzin. Then there's another thing called Gruziny. Gruziny in Russian are rodents. So he called, since they rhyme, he called the Georgians rodents in Russian, including the Georgians in Russia during the 2008 war between Russia and Georgia, that 6-day war, or I think about 6 days or so. And counting, there were a lot of Georgians in the Russian military. Yeah, that was a hell of an insult. He told an Azerbaijani co-worker who was a Russian citizen that her place wasn't in politics, her place was in the market selling apples, and things like that. I mean, the guy was just an out-and-out Nazi. I mean, literally, he was a Nazi. He's the same type of crap that sits in Ukraine. Why Zelensky, by the way, feels the pain of his widow and all that. So nobody wanted him. He never was any kind of opposition for anybody, any real politician in Russia. So, okay, so there's that narrative. And then, okay, so he's already in jail. Why would Putin want him dead? I mean, just why? He's already in jail. He ain't going anywhere. And he's in jail for trying to start a civil war in Russia. Basically start a right-wing revolution. That's what he went to jail for longer than the original 4 years he was given for corruption. So at this point, he's worth much, much more to the West dead than alive. And his wife the next day, so the body's just barely gotten cold, right? And his wife the next day is at the Munich Security Conference with a smile on her face, walking up to her microphone to become the face of the opposition, to take up her husband's place. The body isn't cold yet. The woman is well-dressed, barely holding back a smile, and you can see the video. I mean, the video is she's got like a half smile, like she's trying to hold it back. Yeah, I'm here, I'm there, and I no longer have to hide on my lovers either. Woohoo! So yeah, I mean, they're not even making a huge effort to hide this anymore. It's just keep the narrative going. Repeat the same thing enough times to the average man, and he's going to believe whatever the hell you tell him, because he doesn't want to think for himself.
That's the strategy. They keep the lie going, repeat it forever. And then when things get bad for them, as you just mentioned, they wiped the slate clean about Ukraine and Israel, and now everything is Navalny. Putin did it. Putin killed him. I want to add one thing about Navalny,
Yeah.
and this needs to be stated again and again. He was recruited by George Soros and the CIA to go to the United States and study at Yale. This is their playbook. Many of these leaders across Europe, the EU, and NATO have all been educated in places like Harvard and Yale and Columbia and Stanford, all these major universities. And actually, Stas, what you and I both know, they're not being educated, they're being groomed.
Of course they are. And you know what the funny part is? If you look at the video, and it's been going around on the internet, Yale had a moment of silence in memory of Navalny, or I'm sorry, Navalny. They couldn't even get his name right on the title that they showed. I mean, that's how they're barely even trying, and they don't have to anymore. That's the problem. They're just it's the narrative runs itself. You can screw up as much as you want, and they'll just laugh it off because the vast majority of people are asleep. Just like it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. The level this is. They're not even bothering to try. Why should they? The peasants aren't going to do anything. They figured that out already. The peasants are groomed. They're like a beaten girlfriend, the population. They'll always come back. Oh, they'll change next election. I know they will. They brought me flowers. They'll change next election. How many elections did they have to steal before you figure out that you get one piece of shit or another piece of shit, and they'll probably steal the election for the worst piece of shit? You're not going to get any change in elections. The system is gone. The Constitution is a rag you show little kids and foreigners and beat them on the head with. The United States Constitution isn't worth the paper it's written on. And England doesn't even have a constitution. And as for the Germans and the rest, they're just broken vassals. And they'll do whatever they're being told. And when these farmers, sooner or later, will be shut up and moved out, or they'll start the war and they'll be shut up that way. That's the unfortunate part, because half measures don't work anymore. And voting for the pocket opposition doesn't get you anywhere either. The only way you get anywhere is clear the field. So, but that's not going to happen, and they know it's not going to happen, so it's not an issue. There's nothing an issue that needs to be worried about. Not the elites. The elites worry about the East. They worry about Russia. They worry about Iran. They worry about China. They worry about Africa slipping from under their control, or parts of Latin America. They don't worry about America and its direct vassals, because the population is so vassalized. It's been so dumbed down. They don't have to worry about the population. It's sad to say, but I mean I absolutely believe that.
Well,
a few voices of reason, though.
We have two viewers tonight, Denise J. and Randomy Zerg, and they've been commenting, and I posted them, so I want to thank you. But, I have been thinking about what we're talking about. You talk about dumbed down or brainwashed. The American Intelligence Network, and it's not just the CIA, it's the State Department, it's the NSA, it's the intelligence services in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. They've all got their own intelligence services.
Oh, yeah.
It's all being coordinated, and it has been coordinated for a long time. And so, I mean, I'm an American. You were educated in America as a young guy. We pledge allegiance to the flag, Memorial Day, 4th of July, all these civic celebrations about how great America was and winning World War II. And, Columbus discovered America, and, Thanksgiving Day, and all of this stuff has been, I like to describe it this way, neurologically wired in the brain. So no matter if any contradictory information comes, it's rejected. Christopher Columbus, a slave trader, Africans from bringing slaves from Africa and then trading in rum. and so many others that came here and committed the murder. Genocide's not a strong enough word anymore. The murder of 100 million Native Americans in North America. 100 million. The rest of them have been put on reservations. The American people, they can't even deal with that because, oh my God, we're the city on the hill. We're a beacon of freedom and democracy for the rest of the world. And if we don't do our job, our creator, well, he's going to make us a footnote in history. Well, they are a footnote in history. They are a footnote in history. We just haven't heard the fat lady sing yet. But this, I think, Stas, is the reason why you and I and so many others are frustrated, why people don't take action. Because I don't believe they can. I have lost so many friends and family because of my attempt to break through all of that and to share the truth about what America is and has been for its entire history, going back to the 15th century. And so, in one sense, Stas, I get the feeling we're losing this battle to energize and activate the masses, at least in the United States. Not enough to be a critical mass. Your final thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot that the U.S. could be, and it could be a pretty decent country. Unfortunately, actually, Regis, when you went through the American education system in the 1960s, Terra 1970s, America actually had a very high-level classical education system. My oldest daughter, went to a private school, Catholic private school that taught off the 1960 standards, so I knew how high it was. I went through the 80s, and it was already lower than the Soviet system, but it was still a relatively strong system, relatively. Right now, if you look at the official statistics, I think it was last year, the U.S. had a illiteracy rate of 21%. 21 friggin' percent. Let that sink in. Between 14 and 24% state dependent, but on average 21%. It was just about 16 years ago, there was a scandal in Wisconsin when Wisconsin English language teachers in the schools had to take an exam on the English language, and a third of them failed. But there's a reason for that. The lower, well, I won't say stupider, but the lower educated the people are on average, the easier they are to control and manipulate. They don't know anything. They'll go after anything anybody tells them. And they consume more. That's another thing, by the way. The lower the educated mass is, the more it consumes, and the more it's in debt. So that works well, too. So I'm not really, I'm not even surprised that you don't have what you had in the Vietnam War. I'm not surprised you don't have what you had in the first Gulf War, even compared to that for now. Because most people in America, the videos, you see the videos that come out on YouTube asking Generation Z or millennials, whatever, on the street, hey, what's this, what's that? They don't know anything. They haven't been taught anything except how to feel good about themselves and feel energized about the cause the government tells them to be educated. There was my final thought on this, I saw a great T-shirt, and I'm going to need to get one made just like that. It was a Venn diagram. And on one circle, you have 1984. Another circle, you have Brave New World. In the third circle, you have Animal Farm. And that section in the middle is labeled USA. It's the worst of the modern American state. Is the worst of three worlds. It's 1984. It's Brave New World, and it's Animal Farm right there, ladies and gentlemen. You're living all three. You could dig up all three authors. That probably has to be buried back down, not to see what's that. I'll tell you, if the founding fathers of the U.S. saw what the U.S. is right now, they may have not started a little thing called a war of separation, i.e. revolution. It was never a revolution. It was a war of independence. From England, because they were better off under the English compared to what they have now. That's how pathetic it's gotten, seriously speaking. Oh, well, we'll see what the next elections hold, if we ever get to those elections, and if Trump survives those elections. I've got a feeling that they'll be whacking him as soon as they would rather whack him and risk civil war than having him in there. Now, though I don't know how much he would actually do, but even with that, you know,
Yeah,
just the insanity level is off the charts.
yeah. And I've been describing it as an upside down world. Uh, a better way to describe it, I think, is that we're moving from, and Putin has said this, and President Xi in China has said it, several others. We're in a transition that the world has rarely seen. We're moving from one world order, organizational structure, financial system to another. And the birthing process is what we're going through. It's incredibly difficult, hard. And the baby being born doesn't yet see the light at the end of the birthing process. I think that's where we are today.
Well, hopefully, though, that light isn't a locomotive heading in the other direction.